I've talked about Kieran on this channel before. However, in that video, I was criticizing the aspects around Kieran and not Kieran himself. Now, it's time to actually talk about Kieran himself. If there is any term I could use to describe him, it's that the kid is a loony fan. However, he's not a loony fan the same way Zahir is a loony fan of the Airbenders, or how Kylo Ren is a loony fan of Darth Vader. No, Kieran is what happens when you take a self-insert fanfic writer and then turn him into a Pokemon trainer. He's not like Zahir, who sees the air nomads as a people willing to emulate to reach enlightenment and fulfill his ideals of anarchism, nor is he like Kylo Ren, who tried to emulate Vader and later saw Vader as an obstacle to overcome. No, Kieran sees the legend surrounding Ogerpon like a self-insert fanfic writer sees their favorite characters, something that they are, and something that they wish they could be. Why would anyone want to deal with the reality that their own parents will always find a shiny and new kid to compare you to, when you can simply retreat into the world of fantasy and solve your problems with a few slashes of a sword? Why do you want to be plain old Mary Sue in Middle America as a pandemic ravages around you, when you can be the Mary Sue who radiates light everywhere and can solve any problems like they're super easy, barely an inconvenience? His attachment to the myths is because Ogerpon's strength and independence, not so much that she wreaked havoc around Kitakami. He also does disbelieve some parts of the legend, such as the soul-sucking ogre part. Clearly, he's disbelieved that for some time because he would venture near the ogre's den so many times and even bring the player. What about his life does he dislike and makes him want to retreat into this fantasy? He clearly resents Carmine's coddling of him. His distaste for weakness also stems from how he feels it renders him useless. He also resents his sister greatly. This exchange implies she regularly makes fun of him behind his back. It's either that or she is really, really bad at math because she's constantly taking calculated risk that would make an inebriated teenager taking a math test red with anger at her poor calculations. Or it could be both. He does even spy on his grandfather, Carmine, and the player because, well, it's implied that Carmine talking behind his back happens so regularly that it justifies this. With the resentment out of the way, let's focus on how he reacts to Ogerpon. What he thinks will help Ogerpon versus what actually does help Ogerpon specifically. He thinks rehabilitating Ogerpon's image will help her, which makes sense from a fanboy's perspective, but not a human one. A more human perspective is what the player did, spend time with Ogerpon and help repair and retrieve the mask. This is what happens when you live primarily in fantasies and not reality. He clearly doesn't have friends and lacks a smartphone, and from what we see of his room, or dorm room, we don't even see a computer, so I guess he needs some kind of parasocial relationship by writing fantasies, I guess. The family could have a singular central computer, but I don't think he's the type to be on it for more than a short period of time, and that's mostly just schoolwork. The end of the Teal Mask shows that despite his efforts to help Ogerpon, he believes she rejected him not out of forming a bond with the player character, but rather his lack of strength. Why wouldn't he see his lack of strength as an issue? He romanticizes strength beyond anything else. He wants to be someone others can rely on. Yet despite being a surprisingly difficult boss fight, he does see himself as the load. He does remind me of Tai Lung from Kung Fu Panda, or Toya Todoroki from My Hero Academia. Toya Todoroki and Tai Lung desired validation from the outside, mainly their fathers, Endeavor and Shifu. However, the biggest difference between them is these two had their expectations come from a previous generation which assimilated themselves into their personalities before they finally snapped. Meanwhile, this one formed his own expectations not out of what others thrusted upon him, but as a response to others. That manifested in the form of a parasocial relationship with an ogre from a fairy tale he was told as a child. We all know for a fact that the second DLC, Indigo Disk, Kieran is the champion of the Blueberry Academy. I'm interested to see where this particularly takes us, and his relationship with his own Elite Four, even if that is explored at all. Depending on how obsessed he is with beating the player, I wonder if we'll have a Kokushibo and Yoriichi moment. For those of you who don't read or watch Demon Slayer, Yoriichi was the shonen hero of the golden age of Demon Slayers, talented and strong beyond belief because he was born that way. His brother, Michikatsu, was the rival character who couldn't keep up. Because he was destined to die young because of plot reasons, Michikatsu became the demon Kokushibo. The next time he confronts Yoriichi, Yoriichi managed to escape the curse of dying at 25. Despite being blind and over 80 in Sengoku-era Japan, he still manages to land the first blow against Kokushibo, before dying of old age. This isn't a panel of Kokushibo winning, this is a panel of Kokushibo mutilating Yorichi's corpse because he died of old age on the battlefield. He is so dead set on being the best that he cannot comprehend the idea that his own twin loved him that much. His ultimate death is quite pitiful. He strikes down his own descendant, extinguishes his own bloodline, and then crumbles to dust, realizing he could never surpass his twin. Maybe we again get something like that with Kieran. He realizes that he could never win against the player character and questions whether everything will be for nothing if he even does win, or ends up making a deal with this mysterious, unknown figure found in the game's image files. Though obviously this is Pokemon and not Demon Slayer, he's not going to die a pitiful death. He's probably going to get screwed over by his actions and get easily forgiven by his friends. But those are my thoughts on the matter. Thanks to Weibo for the gameplay footage. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, subscribing, tipping the channel on Ko-fi. This is Cyril signing off.